It's not every day that I get to follow up a video that I made in a semi-timely fashion. The video that I'm talking about is my review of the Quantum HD8 by Presonus, which I boldly claimed was going to change pro audio forever. While this did cause some confusion, like I think I unintentionally triggered people who thought I was talking about the bit depth for some reason. I also did say in the video that I wanted to follow it up with my experience when I had more time with the unit. I also wanted to compare my experience to the much more affordable and potentially more ergonomic ES2, which comes in at only $199 at the time of making this video. And for transparency, this video is sponsored by Sweetwater and Presonus, who sent this unit out to me, but I'm actually the one that initiated the video. Like, I asked them if they would send over the ES2 for me to check out because it is the cheapest in the line of the Quantum interfaces and also just morbid curiosity. And of course, if you are interested in one of these audio interfaces and you use my link down in the description below, it goes a really long way to help me keep doing this on the channel. You guys know how YouTube works at this point, so let's just get into it. This is the ES2 from Presonus. It is a 2-in, 2-out interface that is bus powered via USB-C port. Now, if your computer lacks a compatible port to power this unit, you can power this externally. There's another USB-C type input there for wall power. It has a full metal enclosure that houses 2 max HD preamps with up to 75 decibels of gain. Speaking of gain, it has the same auto gain functionality of the HD8 from my previous video. And this is the biggest game-changing feature for me personally. It has the same loopback feature of the HD8, although it does not have as many loopback mixes. It works with the universal control app for adjusting your mix and monitoring levels. It has 2 rear-mounted 3.5mm TRS MIDI in and output jacks and 2 mono 1/4-inch output jacks. On the front of the unit, we have a 1/4-inch guitar or instrument input and a headphone output. Now, unlike the larger HD8 unit, the ES2 has a 24-bit 192 kHz resolution. The ES2 also comes bundled with a 6-month subscription to Studio One if you want to try out their DAW as well. So I'm going to talk about my experience using the ES2, how it relates to the HD8 through the course of this video, and why I think these interfaces are great and who they're for. Okay. The first thing I want to talk about is the build quality and the ergonomics. There are basically 3 different types of builds when it comes to audio interfaces. The slanty type with buttons on the top, usually with a large volume knob, the rack mountable units, and then the boxes that are just begging you to put a cup of coffee on top of them. Now, of course, there are some oddball designs as well, but these are the 3 main types of audio interfaces in my experience. I've owned all of these, and my favorites are typically the more ergonomic units when I want to have something on my desktop within reach that's convenient. And then I lean rack mountable when I want a larger interface and more input and output options. The ES2 is the slanty desktop type of audio interface, and comparatively for day-to-day use, I prefer this over the rack mount HD8 since it's within reach and I can use the volume knob without having to lean over my desk, you know, to get to my rack that's over there. The build quality is really good also. I wasn't sure what to expect from the pictures that I had seen online. It looked like it might be partially plastic, but the housing is fully metal and it just has a really nice quality feel to it. It has a little bit of weight too. I think the one downside is I would like more controls on the unit itself, like being able to mute each input independently through the front control panel. Instead, what you have to do is you actually have to go into the software to mute and unmute the inputs. I always find that to be a hassle, and I feel like it could be done in a more elegant way through the actual unit itself. Like, for example, when I press the input 1 button and then I press the mute button, it mutes the actual output itself rather than the input that I've selected. Now, there is an app on iOS devices for this, and while I thought this was going to be a workaround for me, the thing that I found is I just don't really like having my iPad sitting on my desk all the time and open, ready to work. There's also an encoder button, and I can't actually figure out what this does. On the HD8, it cycles in between the outputs on the small LED screen, but since there's no screen on the ES2, I'm not sure what the functionality is. If you know, please tell me down in the comments. But the point is, it would be an awesome feature if I could select input 1, for example, and then hit the encoder wheel and be able to mute and unmute that input right here. I think it would be a great feature, and I'm not sure if this could be included in an update, but why not use the currently unused encoder wheel button to toggle the mute on and off on the inputs? Next thing I want to talk about is the loopback. The loopback is my favorite feature on the Quantum line of audio interfaces, and while it's certainly not the first interface to do this, it is the first interface that I've owned that ever does it, and it does it really easily. You can basically set up whatever audio you want to be routed through the loopback mix through the universal control app. Once that's done, you can set the loopback as your input in your DAW or most likely OBS if you're streaming. I can't even tell you how many hours I've wasted trying to set up software to do this with other audio interfaces. And I know it's not just me either. I actually see questions come up quite a bit in group chats with other YouTubers about recording the audio for doing plugin reviews and stuff like that, because despite being an in-demand feature for a long time, there really hasn't been a good way to do it until relatively recently. And the way it's implemented in the Quantum series of audio interfaces has been a true game changer for me. It makes a pretty common obstacle that I have in my workflow more or less obsolete. That's a pretty big deal. Okay, I need to add something in right here. While I was editing this video, I actually was looking into loopback features on other audio interfaces. Turns out that on my old audio interface, it was capable of loopback. However, forever, this feature was sort of hidden. You had to go pretty deep into the settings, and without watching an online video tutorial, I probably would have never figured this out. Whereas with the Quantum line of interfaces, I felt like it was pretty straightforward, just my experience. So good thing they did that for knuckleheads like me. Anyways, keep that in mind when I am talking about the loopback feature. I think the implementation is the important part here. All right. Before this, I used to just run 2 audio interfaces, which worked mostly, but occasionally you would run into sync issues or clocking issues if one of your interfaces went rogue and changed its own sampling rate for some reason. No more of that nonsense, just one interface and I'm good to go. Bit depth and fidelity is a little bit more of a difficult topic to cover because depending on who you are talking to, it makes a massive sonic difference or you literally don't hear any difference because of the human hearing spectrum. Either way, I'll just say that I don't really utilize the higher 32-bit and 192 kilohertz sampling rate of the HD8. I pretty much stick to 24-bit and 48 kilohertz just for the file size and the RAM utilization alone. Yes, running an audio interface with higher sample rates and bit depth will eat up your resources fast. So on this topic, I don't really have much to add beyond what I said in my previous video. My guess is it's unlikely that a smaller number is going to be a turnoff if you are looking for an audio interface in this price range anyways. Just a hunch. So why do I think this is a game changer and who is it for? Well, the reason this is a game changer for me is that it really combines some good workflow features with the design. Okay, I am editing this video right now and I just realized that I didn't really get to the point that I wanted to get to because the more features at more competitive prices that these audio interfaces start coming out at, the better it is for everybody, especially with people who, you know, are streaming using audio interfaces, things like that, people who need to screen capture and record things, their outputs while they're screen capturing. Stuff like loopback makes that so much easier. And I know I'm focusing on this detail a lot, and there is a huge feature set in the Quantum HD8. If you haven't seen my video, go check that video out. And when you take all of these features and you put them together in the form factor they're in, with like the quality of, you know, the full metal housing and everything, like the whole aesthetic of the unit, you have the loopback, you have the auto gain on the ES2 for $199. It really changes the perception of value, like what you can start expecting from audio interfaces at that price point. I remember my first audio interface, it didn't do anything. Like I was amazed it could get sound from my microphone into my computer. And look where we are now. Now, I will say the one thing that I wish was included in the Quantum line of audio interfaces, you know, aside from like the hardware functionality, like I mentioned earlier in the video, the one thing that I really wish was included is the DSP monitoring. And maybe, you know, that would have changed like the price point on them, and that's why they didn't include. I'm not really sure. I obviously don't work for Presonus. I'm just a guy on the internet. But I think that would have been the cherry on top of the sundae for me. I really like having DSP monitoring so I can like put a compressor in my signal chain and not have to worry about changing my latency in my DAW. I like having it completely separate. That's just me personally. Let me know how you feel about that. Maybe you're the same way, but I would have just really liked to have that functionality. But I don't think it takes away from how impressed I am with these audio interfaces and how much I've just enjoyed using them over the last couple months. And I would say the HD8 is an excellent option, especially for people creating content. It has so many features. If you are creating digital content, like you are reamping and making digital profiles, maybe on like Tonex or something like that, it makes that really easy with the reamping ports in the front. I mean, look at this. I have my Quantum HD8 mounted right here. This is where it lives. It's really great. I just wish that this volume knob was closer to me. That's the only issue I have with it, but you know, that's not the interface's fault. All right, hopefully I cleared that up. Let's get back to me over here. Not only can this sit on my desk and be in useful range as a master volume knob, but it can also be bus powered from your computer, meaning if your computer has a compatible USB port, then you don't need a separate power cable to power the unit itself. I like the feature set that it offers in this package as well. Now, I couldn't use this for everything since one of the main features that attracted me to the Quantum HD8 in the first place was its reamp outputs on the front of the unit. But this does almost everything else I need. I think if you were looking for something that's small, minimalist, and relatively inexpensive, the ES2 is really hard to beat. This is probably the audio interface that I would recommend to most people that I know, with the exception being that you need another line out to do reamping, or you want a second set of monitors or something like that, in which case I'd say probably spring the extra money for the ES4, which has 4 inputs and 4 outputs. All right, thank you to Sweetwater and Presonus, but more importantly, thank you for being here. If you liked this video, hit the like button. If you really like what I do here on this channel, consider subscribing or being super OP and joining us over on Patreon with all of these beautiful people over here, and I will see you in the next video. Bye.